fantastic, fantastic. Your Excellency, Your Excellencies, dear guests, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the Russian Culture House and to this virtual meeting, virtual exhibition dedicated to the hybrid due to the coronavirus pandemic and all the lockdown rules, but live opening of the Cold Regions Warming exhibition. The art of Gennady Ivanov attracts attention to a critical challenge that is presented to the global community and especially to the young generation. The issue of global warming and the climate emergency in these circumpolar regions that are shared by Russia and Canada. We're very fortunate today to welcome distinguished guests representing both countries, bringing attention to this incredibly important issue. Without further ado, we will invite our speakers to speak in the following order. And our first speaker is His Excellency Andrei Kelin, Russian Ambassador to the United Kingdom.
Good evening or good morning in Canada. I hope you are going well. Just some words about, it's a great honor and pleasure, of course, for me to be present at the opening of this very important project, which unites the problem of which we are very conscious right now, and at the same supported by art. I have to say that differently from the common perception, in Russia we are very conscious about what is happening to the climate and how dangerous it is. Especially I like the name of the project. It's called Regional Warms. It has a paradox in itself and looks like very pleasant, and it is like the beginning of a problem. Right now it is only positive things in Moscow, in European part of Moscow. Winters have become shorter, springs have become at least 10 days longer, but in the longer run, we of course understand how dangerous it is. And President Putin not once has addressed in the recent months the problem. Our country is very big, but it is about 65% of our country. This is the permafrost. And we know that if it will melt by the year 2100, at least quarter of it will melt. Then we will get huge floods and very many problems, really very many problems. But at the same time, the development will go in a spiral way, because with the melting of the permafrost, we shall go, perhaps it's a common knowledge, but it will be a release of the poisonous gas, it's called methane. And methane, by the way, it is 28 times more poisonous than carbon dioxide. And then we really will face it, and really that becomes quite a lot of problem. So I'm very, very grateful to those who have organized, who has attracted attention to this problem by the means of art. And I know that how climatic problem is now in the center of attention of the European politics. We are not supposed to take unrealistic obligations for us. But believe me, Russia will do everything to deal with the problem, to propagate it, to propagate the necessity to deal with the problem, and we will do it all in all our ways. So I would like to, in the end of my short expose, I would like to congratulate those who have organized it, especially the painter, whom I will probably will see later on. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And now let me invite Their Excellency Janice Charette, High Commissioner for Canada to the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, Her Excellency cannot be with us tonight, but we hope to see you at the Russian Cultural Center later on when the pandemic is gone. Finally, we have the vaccine. Please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Excellency, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Dobry wieczór всем вам, et bonsoir à vous tous, no matter where you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's my pleasure to join you today for this London launch of the Cold Regions Warming Art Science Project and Exhibition. I really want to thank Ambassador Kelin and the Russian Cultural Center for hosting us this evening, and thank all of you for joining us virtually across the globe to discuss this important topic. I am very sorry that we can't be there together in person to have a chance to see these beautiful works up close and with our own eyes, and to be able to experience this exhibition and this event. But the topic is important enough to bring us all together. And in some ways, perhaps we have the advantage that more of us are able to gather virtually in order to be part of this event tonight across the miles and miles of landscape and ocean that are between us. The North figures very prominently in the history and the culture of both Canada and Russia. This Cold Regions Warming Project makes an important contribution to our collective understanding. It sensitizes us to the impacts that climate change is having in northern regions, including on freshwater ecosystems, which are crucial to the livelihood of peoples and sustainable communities in our northern regions. I'm also very pleased that this event draws together not only the science of climate change, but also the impact that climate change is having as expressed through art. And I look forward to discovering the art exhibit in more detail later this evening. The exhibit of the works of Mr. Ivanov powerfully communicates that our warming planet is leading to deep and lasting impacts on the people and on our natural environment. This is particularly true in the Arctic, which is warming 3 times faster than anywhere else on the planet. In Canada, recent reports suggest that most of the Canadian Arctic marine region will be ice-free for part of the summer of 2030, if not sooner. Truly a remarkable development. The United Kingdom held a very successful Climate Ambition Summit last weekend, where no less than 75 leaders from around the world spoke about their country's commitment to moving forward in addressing this climate change emergency. And this, I think, what sets the tone well and creates some important momentum for all of us to work together to forge an ambitious outcome for the upcoming COP26 summit that will take place later this year. Last Friday, Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada announced a strengthened climate plan to protect the environment, which will also create jobs and support communities. The plan includes a wide range of measures, up to 64 new measures and $15 billion in investments, in addition to funding that's coming through the Canada Infrastructure Bank that will be funding clean infrastructure that was announced this fall. As a result of the measures in this new plan, Canada can exceed its 2030 Paris Agreement emissions reduction target. And they will also, through these measures, we will put in place the building blocks that will help us to get to net zero by 2050, as we have committed to do. It's important to deliver on the commitments that we have already made, as the ambassador said. And Canada is positioned, as a result of this comprehensive plan, to be an active and a constructive player in the global fight against climate change. Climate change is the quintessential public good. It knows no borders. It is only by working together that we are going to be able to address this urgent crisis and avoid the worst effects of climate change and build a healthier and cleaner future. And the reasons for doing this are clear. In northern and indigenous communities, the impacts of climate change are felt every single day. Changes in sea ice conditions affect migration patterns, and what once was normal weather has contributed to shifts in how people live and interact with their environment. Indigenous communities are demonstrating their strength and their resilience by adapting, including by leveraging new technologies to monitor migration patterns and sea ice so they can continue to hunt and fish safely for their livelihoods and for their daily sustenance. It's so impressive to see how the next generation is committed to preserving their culture, their language, and the environment too. Indigenous youth are reaching out to counterparts across borders and working together to push for change. The Government of Canada supports these international engagement efforts, and together with our Arctic partners, are working to build resilience to better equip and support communities as they adapt to new realities. Now, finally, an important venue for international cooperation to address questions of sustainability in the North is the Arctic Council. Canada is working to champion the human dimension of climate change and of the Council's work, with a focus on Northern peoples and communities. And this includes developing high-quality science, especially on climate change and its impact on the region. Cooperation between all of our Arctic neighbors leads to a better outlook and enhanced prosperity for the region as a whole. And Canada places great importance on working with Russia on our common interests in the Arctic, cooperating on scientific research, on Indigenous affairs, and on environmental issues. We look forward to working with Russia to ensure a successful chairmanship of the Arctic Council, which Russia will take over in May of next year. Given we are here in London today, I'm speaking to you from London today, I want to note that the UK has a role as an active observer at the Council, and they've been there since the beginning, making meaningful contributions, such as efforts to mitigate black carbon and methane emissions. This work contributes and benefits both the Council and Arctic peoples and communities around the circumpolar North. And of course, I want to acknowledge the critical leadership role that the UK, along with Italy, will be playing in forging a global path to COP26. The impacts of climate change are real, but Canada sees an important opportunity for international cooperation and together to apply our shared experiences to better enable ecological and environmental protection, community resilience, and sustainable development. So thank you so much, Ambassador, for your very kind invitation to join with you today and colleagues at the Russian Cultural Center. Thank you, Mr. Ivanov, for your beautiful and your thought-provoking work. And of course, congratulations to my friend and fellow compatriot, Dr. John Pomeroy of the University of Saskatchewan, and his partner, Professor Trevor Davies of the University of East Anglia, for your leadership in the Global Water Futures Program. I wish you continued success with this innovative partnership, which brings together both art and science. Indeed, we need exactly this kind of collaboration that transcends disciplines and borders to help tackle what is the challenge of our generation. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now we move on to our next speaker, Professor John Pomeroy, Director of Global Water Futures and Circumpolar Climate Change and Water Impacts, University of Saskatchewan.
Hello, thank you so much. It's I'm greeting you from earlier in the morning from Canmore, Alberta, Canada, in the Canadian Rockies, where much of what we're going to talk about is going to happen on the weekend when we have a high of +7 degrees and rain, not weather that one typically associates with the Canadian Rockies as we approach Christmas time. So I'm going to show you a few slides, and then we will segue into some paintings of Mr. Ivanov to show a fusion of science and art, which I hope you will also find so very powerful. So we'll start with this now. There we are. All right. So going to talk a bit about global water futures, a bit about climate change, and the water impacts that are very much the focus of this research program. As remarked by Madame Charette and His Excellency, the circumpolar North is warming faster than the rest of the Earth. Here's some of the data brought from together by NASA in the US. And in the latitudes occupied by Canada and Russia, we've seen 1.5 to almost 5 degrees of warming since 1960. So Canada and Russia, on average, are warming at twice the global average, and the North are warming at approximately 3 times the global average. You can see here the degree of warming since 1960 with latitude. So here's the equator, here's the South Pole, and here we get into Russian and Canadian latitudes, 50 degrees north, 60 degrees north, 70 degrees north, and as you get towards 80 degrees north, over 4 degrees of warming. We have a serious common problem together, and when we hear about the attempts for the world to keep warming limited to 1.5 degrees, we have to realize that our countries are already past that and into a very serious situation. When we look forward from Canada, this is results from the Canadian government from Environment and Climate Change Canada for future warming under two scenarios. The upper panels here, upper maps, show the degree of warming if we stabilize greenhouse gases this century. It's called an RCP 4.5 scenario. If we stay on the path that we're unfortunately closer to as a globe right now, ineffective greenhouse gas controls, then we could see something as awful as RCP 8.5. And these suggest tremendous amounts of warming for northern Canada, even under the more optimistic scenario, another 3 or 4 degrees, under the less optimistic scenario, in excess of 10 degrees of warming. And we're already seeing natural disasters in our north from this. The upper photograph here is the former lake bed of Kluane Lake, Yukon. The glacier retreat caused a river to divert from that lake. This was a glacial lake bed just a few years ago, and now it's a place with dust storms in May and June. And these are the fires at Fort McMurray, Alberta, from just a few years ago. So we're seeing tremendous impacts from this warming already. We don't want to see more. The other aspect for the north is not only warming, but wetting. And we're already seeing this as well in northern Canada and northern Russia with increased precipitation. Much of it is rain, but also increased snowfall in the winter. And these events are also clustering in dangerous ways where we have multiple day rainstorms with tremendous increases in their intensity and occurrence. And the intensity of single day storms also increasing throughout the world. So it's not just the increase in average precip that you see here for those two scenarios where we're looking at 10 to 20%, or under more pessimistic scenarios, 30 to 50% in the north, but the way it's concentrated, events that caused the Calgary floods of 2013, the most expensive flooding disaster in Canadian history, or disastrous floods of our northern farmland in the prairies. And Russia's also experienced this in the steppe region and elsewhere where it was unexpected. The impacts of this coupled climate change through precip and temperature on our north are profound. The thaw of permafrost that underlies northern Canada, northern Russia, permafrost being ice-rich ground, which typically does not thaw, permanent frost, but becoming impermanent, as Gennady's art will show you. The flooding of northern agricultural regions from summer rainstorm events, unprecedented in many cases. The retreat of our mountain glaciers and our high Arctic glaciers, again unprecedented. And then the terrible fires that have afflicted both of our countries over the last few years, record in many cases here. So we're seeing declines in snow cover, shifts in the changes of our rivers because of retreating glaciers, and our coldest regions are warming faster than anywhere else. In 2016, the Government of Canada funded the Global Water Futures Program through its Canada First Research Excellence Fund. And we're very grateful for that. It's a consortium of universities led by the University of Saskatchewan, but with Waterloo, McMaster, Laurier, and 14 other Canadian universities that is here to deliver and develop risk management solutions. It's a massive increase in water science and climate science. We're building tools such as computer models and instruments to better manage water futures in Canada and other cold regions where global warming is changing our landscape, our ecosystems, and our water environment. And the water is the fundamental basis for life. Global Water Futures has strong engagement with Indigenous people, with a large number of Indigenous community-led research projects where we combine Western science with traditional knowledge to find solutions that are appropriate for those communities, whether it's protecting their source water for drinking or helping them to better deal with the impacts of climate change. And these communities can be from Southern Canada to Northern Canada. The overall mission of Global Water Futures is to improve disaster warming. Our flood and drought prediction systems need improvement, in particular because of the impacts of climate change, to predict future water supply, whether it's frozen or unfrozen, when will it flow, will rivers keep flowing, will they be clean, Will our lakes be usable and be clean? Will we have enough water for agriculture, for industry, for energy, for our ecosystems? And to help its many users, Global Water Futures has 64 projects and core teams that are working with 500 partners across Canada to help them adapt to climate change and to help them manage risks that are rapidly changing. Now, you see, I've begun to insert a bit of Gennady's art into this presentation, and as a way of illustrating how science and art can be so powerful together in conveying a message. Global Water Futures has 60 observatories across the country, which allow us to provide big data for water. These can be isolated research camps, they can be sophisticated hydrometeorological stations, snowpack studies, glacier studies, eDNA studies that can be used for COVID detection in sewage, use of drones for remote sensing, tall towers, subsurface groundwater stations. They're all across the country. And we thought this could provide perhaps a backdrop for a new way to communicate science. And so we were delighted to be introduced to Gennady Ivanov by Professor Davies and invited both of them out for a tour of these sites. So the sites could form the basis of his art through Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and then later Ontario. And here is Mr. Ivanov himself on the St. Elias ice field with Mount Logan behind him, the highest mountain in Canada, which he's just painted, and the temperatures are about -14 on this particular day. That's an incredible skill to develop a pastel in an environment like this, so severe, so remote, at such high altitude, and his particular skill in being able to do that and immediately capture the flavor of the landscape has been a wonderful asset for Global Water Futures. Here is Gennady and Professor Trevor Davies at Wolf Creek Research Basin outside of Whitehorse in the Yukon. You see the tall shrubs spreading in this area. They have been growing as a result of climate warming and are darkening and warming the surface. And that was the basis of the transitions expedition over 2 years across many parts of Canada. The combination of art and science can be so powerful. One of the glaciers studied in Canada since the early 1960s very intensively, but even by earlier explorers such as the Vauxes in the late 1800s, early 1900s, is Peyto Glacier, named after Bill Peyto. It's in Banff National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And here's a photograph of it. And if we had taken this photograph in the 1960s, the ice would have extended right to where the photographer is standing on a hill. But it's retreated tremendously, and he has captured this, the new lakes, the ruined landscape, the retreating glacier, the evolving disaster, but its harsh beauty at the same time in his pastel in this case. The science behind it, we study the Meltong Peyto Glacier very intensively, and this is the observations and modeling of the ice elevation over 6 years in the last decade. You can see it's lost about 25 meters of ice wasting downward. And again, Gennady's art evocatively conveys the terrible beauty of the loss of this fantastic site. Wildfires are another issue that connects Canada and Russia so deeply, and Gennady's painting Mountain Tinderbox and Ashes conveys some of the science that we've been trying to present through elements such as the conversation and in public speaking, as well as in scientific papers, looking at the massive peat fires and the impact of wetlands and controlling these fires in northern Canada. And this is research out of McMaster University, one of the GWF partners. So Gennady's art conveys the message, which future will we have going forward? A future of science, a future of decisions informed by scientific information, by the best results we can convey to decision makers, or a future where we continue to make poor decisions, where we ignore disasters, where we don't act when we clearly should be acting, a future which is grim and destructive. And his art conveys that emotionally far better than a graph or a chart might in fact do so. I will pass over now to our Russian hosts to discuss some of Gennady's art using his words. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your wonderful speech. Antoine will be here in just a moment to read the address from Gennady. Thank you. Gennady, you here? You're online with us? I can't see you, but this evening I'm going to pretend that I'm you. So I'll read out your text in English. Can you hear me, Gennady, and everyone?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, sir. So Gennady Ivanov, a professional artist with almost 35 years of experience in various mediums. He currently lives in Norwich, United Kingdom, and is originally from Vladimir, a historic city in Russia. Gennady cannot join us today and sends his best wishes to everyone, but he's with us online. And I'll read out his address that he wanted to deliver in front of the excellencies and guests. So I have done several art projects before I have met with Professor Trevor Davis, and was always inspired by the Norfolk coastline. But I have seen a lot of coastal erosion, and I started to ask myself the question: what is happening to the environment? My friend Antonina and Tony, who am I very grateful to, introduced me to Professor Davis, who in turn put me in touch with Professor John Pomeroy, the director of the Global Water Futures Research Program in Canada. Professors Pomeroy and Davis supported 2 expeditions of mine that have opened my eyes to the impacts of climate change. It was an invaluable experience to observe how scientists work in this field, to see what technical support they need to conduct their studies. Many people don't understand just how complex it is, and that, in my opinion, is the root cause of doubts and denialism of the climate change. Very often these field studies take place very far from the labs, in the mountains and near the Arctic Ocean, very remote sites that are very challenging to access. And my paintings are tribute to their work. I'm not a scientist, so my works dedicated to the climate and water supply are loaded with symbols. My paintings are a visual story. The main idea is to give the ordinary people, even children, the possibility to understand what is going on with the climate and how it has changed, how this is affecting us, and what future generations can expect. I use a lot of dynamic strokes, textures, colors, and movement. It is what I call visual impact. I want to show, to expose, and to represent the feeling of being in the polar region and learning about the climate and how it changes very quickly around us. A few examples of the exhibition paintings. One of the exhibition iconic painting is the cold region's work, an oil on canvas representing 2 countries, Canada and Russia, with an Arctic circle in the middle. This summer was the hottest on record in parts of the circumpolar north. Via red, green, brown colors, I have tried to represent the forest and peat fires, browning boreal forests, thawing permafrost, and shrinking ice cover. There are lots of cracks in this paint. This is my artistic metaphor for the dramatic changes which are occurring in frozen ground and ice cover. Thank you very much, Gennady, for your address. And I must say, in real life, these paintings look absolutely fantastic, and I hope maybe more people will see soon when we get out of this pandemic. Let's hope for the best. Let's stay positive with that. Thank you very much, Gennady. Now I would like to pass the Zoom call to Professor Trevor Davis, University of East Anglia, the intersection of art and science. Professor?
Thank you very much. You saw 2 of Gennady's paintings in rapid succession there. One was called Distant Cousins Reunited. And here he was portraying some of the impacts of permafrost thawing, the polar bear, the cave bear. The cave bears were became extinct about 30,000 years ago. The cave bear line split into the brown bear line, and then the brown bear line split into the polar bear line. So a very evocative way of expressing some of the main big impacts of permafrost thawing. And then the next one you saw very quickly is another example of Gennady's expression of what is happening on Peyto Glacier in the Canadian Rockies. The strange material in the upper foreground, midground there are black hillocks. This is cryoconite, which is a material consisting of ash debris from vegetation, peat fires, viruses, algae, bacteria, accumulates on the snow cover every summer and increases the reflectivity, thus enhancing the absorption of heat from the sun. And this leads to even more melting, even more encouraging even more glacier decline. Okay, John. I'd like to say a little bit about how I see how we have attempted to make a success of the intersection of art and science in this project. Gennady and both John and I felt that if this art science project was going to work, then we had to learn something of each other's methods and techniques and try to gain an insight into each other's thought processes. It wasn't good enough for us scientists to take the artist to a location and say, paint it. So Gennady learned about climate science, and by observing him in the field and in the studio and discussing many of the paintings as he worked, we started to understand something of how he produced his striking paintings. Now it's become a bit of a cliche that art is truth. Not all artists agree. Picasso was one of the most famous dissenters. Gennady's own mantra is art hurts. When the stakes are so high as they are for the cold regions, it is axiomatic that the truth will hurt. So some of my thoughts on why and how Gennady has been so effective in producing paintings which capture so much of the essence of the impacts and the implications of climate change in the cold regions. First skill, which John mentioned, is to be able to capture the most important elements of what he sees very quickly in the field. Sometimes very quickly indeed, because conditions can be extreme, very cold or blizzards blowing. In this particular example, this pastel, this field painting, conditions were not extreme, but this pastel was produced in about 20 minutes. It's titled Ice to Water Too Soon, April the 23rd, 2019. And it represents a stretch of the Yukon River in Canada, painted a few days before the equal earliest date of river ice breakup for 123 years of continuous monitoring at Dawson City, just a little downstream from this location. Channels of surface water can be seen bisecting the ice cover in the bend of the river. Gennady uses such field paintings, such field pastels, to his photographs and his memories to produce studio oils, such as, next slide. This is entitled After a Short Winter. You can see that this is a larger painting, 70 by 90 centimeters. earlier river ice break across Canada and Russia is being triggered by warmer winters and springs and earlier snowmelt. The longer ice-free system, the longer ice-free season and warmer water temperatures mean changes to aquatic ecosystems, including the loss of fish species, which rely on cold water. Next slide. Another rapidly produced field painting, pastel. Another example of the way in which he can capture the essence of what he's seeing and the essence of what we as scientists want him to portray. Permafrost thawing here is causing the bank of a creek to collapse and trees to tumble. Another 15-minute job. And he imaginatively incorporated the mud, which was oozing out from the bottom of the bank, actually into the painting. So one of the materials in that painting is mud. Next slide, please. Again, that painting, other paintings provide the basis for this oil on canvas, impermanent frost. Now, this particular painting is not on display in this exhibition, but Gennady has incorporated elements of this painting in Distant Cousins Reunited, a large painting you briefly glimpsed earlier, which also included other elements like the aurora borealis. Here, the permafrost is water rich, so ice is visible within the soil and water is cascading from the exposed surface. No longer firmly rooted, toppling and drunken trees are dead or dying at the top of the bank. Next slide. Fortress Mountain, there in the background in the Canadian Rockies, is one of Global Water Future's important monitoring stations. It's part of a network to improve understanding of rapid climate change and to improve predictive models in complex terrain. This oil on canvas is entitled Nuclear Explosion in Slow Motion, and Gennady has drawn his inspiration from the words of the chief of the Gwich'in indigenous people in Northwest Territories, who described witnessing the profound changes to the landscape caused by climate change as like watching a nuclear explosion in slow motion. Here, the slow motion, the explosion is slowly starting in the cauldron where once a Valier glacier was located. Now, Global Water Futures is fortunate to be working with Gennady. His clarity of visual message can be a potent way of engaging wider audiences in climate change and in the underlying science. One of the many complimentary written comments by visitors to his exhibitions, I think of those, my favorite is by an 11-year-old, "I have never seen anything like it. Amazing." Now, as we move towards COP26 at the end of next year, and the need to engage as many stakeholders as possible over the importance of yet another last opportunity for global society to implement the necessary concrete actions to avoid the very worst consequences of climate change, art science collaborations such as we see here tonight could play a special role in inspiring interest and helping foster the mood for a rapid mobilization of effort. Gennady, it's fascinating to work with you. Thank you, and please get well soon.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, Gennady, please get well soon. We're looking forward to see you live here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, there is a very special ending to this online and live and hybrid opening of this exhibition. I'd like to introduce the regional music composition by Edwin Pope. Is here with me? Got a couple of words? Or? No. Okay, we're going to play now. Thank you. Thank you very much, Edwin, for this beautiful, wonderful festival. Thank you. I guess now, something like Professor John Pomeroy for closing remarks for tonight's exhibition. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank everyone for joining this event. The profound art of Gennady, Ivanov, has affected us all from Canada, from the UK, from Russia, and has brought us together on this incredibly important issue of climate change and the impacts on our water, on our frozen systems of this. We look forward to working more with Gennady as part of the virtual water gallery that Global Water Futures has instituted with a large number of artists from across Canada to find a way to display their art online whilst our galleries and events are closed due to the pandemic. And otherwise, from the University of Saskatchewan, I want to thank you all for joining with us and wish you wonderful holidays, peace, and good health into the new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you, everyone. We absolutely join in this great wishes. Best health to everyone. We will get through this really turbulent and challenging times, and we look forward to seeing you. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll have a lovely week. Thank you very much.